Hello. Hello. I see there are some people already here. That's great. Welcome to this evening's Anglify webinar with me, Patrick. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. So please, if you have a little bit of time, sign into the chat and say hello. Send me a quick hello message. It's nice to know who's out there. Maybe some friends, maybe some people who were here at the previous webinars. Hello, Melody. Welcome. Very nice to see you. I think this is your first time at the webinar, so thank you for joining us. By the way, on the Anglify YouTube channel, there are previous videos, previous webinars that I did about pronunciation, confusion between English and French. That's a little relevant to this evening's webinar, and about St. Patrick's Day and Irish culture. So they're available on the Anglify YouTube if you get the chance to check them out. Hello, Letitia. Welcome. Good evening to you. Thank you for joining. Great. So we have a few people joining. We're a little bit early, so we're not going to start just yet. We have a few minutes, so we won't start just yet. Today's topic is about English and French and about some of the connections between English and French. And we will be looking at a lot of vocabulary. So it's a great chance to learn a few new words, to work on a little bit of pronunciation as well, and to maybe see some of the confusion and some of the difficulties for English language learners, for French people who are trying to learn English. So hopefully this will help you and it will be interesting to you. So we're going to wait a little bit longer, but while we're waiting, as I said, please say hello. Hello, I think it's Solange. Welcome, Solange. Very nice to see you. Perhaps with Jean-Louis as well. So thank you for coming. Okay, l'atelier dans la maison. Hello, welcome again. I remember you were here at the last webinar, so great to see you again. And Angelique, welcome. Jean-Louis, great to see a lot of nice people here, some old friends. And Sylvie, hello, Sylvie. Great. So thanks a lot for coming to everyone. And while we are waiting for people to arrive, because today's webinar is a little bit about France and French and a little bit about English and England, I want you to tell me, what do you think is better, French food or English food? What do you think? Does anybody out there prefer English food, or do you think that French food is better? I wonder what kind of answers I will get to that. Angelique says French food. Okay. So we have one. Letitia agrees. Okay, two people are saying French food is better than English. Letitia, if I was to try some French food for the first time, what would you recommend? Sylvie agrees, French food. L'atelier dans la maison says, is that a real question? L'atelier, it is a little bit of a joke. Everybody knows that French food is much better than English food. Come on. It's a real question, but it's a very simple question. French food is better than English food. We know that for sure. L'atelier, what is your favorite French dish? Yes. Everybody prefers French food. So L'atelier says, we don't put jam everywhere. It helps. Okay. Do you think that English people use too much jam? Okay. I like jam. And Miriam has joined. Great to see you, Miriam. Thank you for joining. And Julien, So hello, Julian. Julian is asking, did I do my yoga? Tomorrow, Julian. I will have more time for yoga tomorrow. What about you? Did you do your yoga this week? Good, good. Great to see a lot of people here. So we're going to get started soon. I am going to I'm going to share my screen. So get started. Great. Okay, Alan, great to see you here. Oh, hello, Kathleen. Welcome from Australia. Thank you for joining. I don't know what time it is in Australia. It's the morning, very early in the morning, I think. So thank you very much for joining. And Alan from France. Thank you, Alan, for coming. So Ellen, welcome. So there are still some people arriving. Don't worry, you're not late. Maybe you can get some food or a cup of tea ready. Kathleen, it's 5 a.m. Oh, well done. I appreciate your dedication. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to this evening's webinar. As you know, the webinar is brought to you by Anglify. So Anglify provide online one-to-one tuition in English and other languages too. So thank you to Anglify for making this possible. Hello, Sonia, welcome. It's good to see you. And so, as some of you know, waiting. Why is it white? Maybe it just takes a moment. The computer is a little bit slow, but as some of you know, my name is Patrick and I am a teacher, a coach with Anglify. So I've been teaching English for over 15 years, and for the last 3 or 4 years with Anglify, working with a lot of French students. So that helps me to get a little idea of some of the difficulties that French learners have. So, okay. Yeah. Okay. So today's webinar is about French and English, similarities, differences, and confusions. Okay. Common challenges. Okay. So one other question before we get started. Maybe in the chat, some of you can suggest your favorite English words. Does anybody have a favorite English word? So I will tell you some of my favorite French words. I think my favorite is probably voilà. Okay. It's so universal. You can use it in so many situations and it sounds pretty nice too. So I think voilà is my favorite French word. But I also like the expression bon appétit because it means you are about to eat, which is always a good time. And in English, we don't really say, you can say enjoy your meal, but we don't say it so much. We like the French, bon appétit. So I like this expression. Helen agrees, voilà is a nice word. What about English words? Does anybody have any favorite English words? Another French expression that I like, but maybe it's a little strange, is I like comme ci, comme ça. And I don't think French people really say this. But when I was a student in school, my teacher told me, you can say comme ci, comme ça. It's a very popular French expression. When people say comment ça va, you can say, oh, comme ci, comme ça. But I don't think French people really say it. Can you help me? Do French people really say this? But I think it sounds really good and I like the sound of it. So I was disappointed when I went to France and people told me, comme ci, comme ça. It's strange. So Ellen said miscellaneous. Oh, it's a long word. Yes, you like that one? Miscellaneous. It's a really interesting word. L'Atelier says ludicrous. Nice. Miriam, amazing. And Marilyn, anyway. Oh, yes, that's one you hear a lot. Anyway, good. Okay, Ellen says in Normandy, people do say comme ci, comme ça. And Marie-Jean says, yes, it's like in French, so. Okay, so yes, a lot of people say, we don't really say it, but some people say it, maybe in Normandy more. Okay, yeah, okay, good. It's a little bit like so in English. In fact, in English, we don't say so very, very much, okay? But maybe your teachers in school in Francais, the English, they say so. But in fact, we don't say it very much. But maybe it's a little bit like comme ci, comme ça. Right. Okay, that was nice. Okay. So today, yes, we are going to be talking about Normandy a little bit, actually, Ellen. So that will be interesting. But today, we are going to look first at some of the roots of different words. Okay. So here you have a tree, and under the ground, the part of the tree under the ground, it's called the roots. So sometimes we say, what are the roots of this word? It means, what are the origins? Where did it come from? Okay, so now I have one difficult question for you. What is it called? What do linguists call the study of the roots of words or the origins of words? So there's a special name for the study of words, the study of the roots of words. Where did the words come from? Does anybody know? You can answer in French or in English. Okay, Ellen says etymology. Good. Etymology. Today we are going to be looking a little bit at etymology. You can see, yeah, a linguist, Letitia, is a person who studies words and where they come from and different aspects of languages. And then etymology is the study of particular words. So you can see that the word etymology in English with a Y, it's basically the same to the French word, okay, except the French has IE. Perhaps the pronunciation is a little different. By the way, I should say at this point that I might be speaking a little French here and there, and I apologize in advance for my bad pronunciation. Okay, so I might make some mistakes with pronunciation, but I will try my best. Okay, so etymology in English, it's basically the same as the French word. So another question for you. What percentage of words in English do you think have a French etymology? So what percentage of words in English do you think come originally from a French language? Okay, I will give you a moment to think about that. Okay, Ellen says 60%. Okay, Letelier says 50. Okay, a few different opinions there. Wow. Then it must be very easy to learn English if you have 60%, 50%. Okay, we're getting a lot of 30s and 40s and 60s. Okay, Melody says 30 to 40. Okay, some good ideas. Kathleen says 33, 1/3. Yeah, good. Okay, good ideas. Let's pause for a moment, because when I ask that question, there are words like etymology that are exactly the same in French and English. And then there are words that are a little bit different. Okay, so I took the example of honesty. Honesty, okay? It came from the French honnêteté, okay? I'm sorry about my pronunciation. But you can see that the French root has given us this modern English word, honesty, okay? This week, it was April Fool Day, so honesty is very relevant. We also have the English word advice. Advice, okay, it's a noun. We have the verb advise, okay? Advice, yes, Ellen, you need the symbols, yes, accent and things like that. So advice comes from the French word avis, okay? If we translate these words, they are not exactly the same, but that is the root, that is the origin of the word. So advice, it's more like the French word conseil in meaning, okay? So if we look in a dictionary, advice, conseil. But the root or the origin of the word is from the French word avis, okay? So it's a little bit different and it has changed over the years. So there are some words that are exactly the same, some that are a little bit different, some that are very different. So in total, what percentage do we have? Whoops. Oh, here is another example of the English word soldier came from an old French word. So you have this old French word, soudaire, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, and the modern French word, soldat. And that gives us the modern English word, soldier. So the English word came from the old French word, okay? So these are just a few examples. So about 30 to 40% of English vocabulary probably comes from French. Some people said 50 to 60, and it's true. Some linguists believe it's more than 40%, but most say about 30 to 40. We don't know exactly, but most say about 30 to 40%. Okay, so you guys were pretty good with that question. Okay, so let's see what's next. Why does so much English come from French? Why is it? Okay. Of course, it's natural. France and England are neighbors. And there's a lot of exchange between neighbors, business, war, conflict, friends. So there's a lot of exchange between neighbors. So the languages will be exchanged, different words will be exchanged too. Okay. Letelier says because of the Romans. Yeah, maybe the Romans were part of it because they helped this exchange. Okay. Um, French was the language of dealing, of business. Okay. Yeah, maybe. There is, in fact, one reason. So there are lots of small reasons, but there is one big reason and one important person. Okay. So we are going to learn a little bit about this person. So I know that Ellen is from Normandy. Do we have any other people from Normandy? And do you know this town in Normandy of Falaise? Does anybody know the town called Falaise? I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I will write it for you. Okay. So does anybody know it? Yeah, Ellen knows it. Okay. Is it a nice place, Ellen? Okay, thank you. So we have the town of Falaise. It's in Normandy. And this man, William the Conqueror, he came from Falaise. He was born in Falaise and he was a Norman duke. So he actually traveled to England and conquered all of England. And he became the King of England. And his descendants, his group, ruled England for hundreds of years. So it's interesting. A Norman prince, a Norman duke, became the King of England. And he passed a rule that in his court, the language was Norman, okay, the Norman language, which is a kind of French, okay. William the Conqueror did not speak English. He never spoke English, but he had a huge impact on the English language. And indirectly, he introduced a huge amount of vocabulary into the English language. So, so in French, you call him Guillaume le conquérant. Okay, yes, yes. So, Beatrice, yes, you have the French name, and in English, William the Conqueror. So, he lived most of his life in France. He lived a little bit in England too. He never spoke English, but he changed the English language. So, perhaps we should call him by his French name, Guillaume le Conquérant. Okay. But in English, we call him William the Conqueror. So um, it's great. Yeah, before William the Conqueror, that's a good question, Ellen. Um, English was influenced by other languages too. For example, Germanic languages, Norse, Celtic languages, Latin also from the Romans. So English is a little bit of a mix, okay? And in fact, next week, there will be another webinar that looks at the history of English and some of these questions. So it's a good question. But the English language before William the Conqueror, we can say for certain, was very different to the English we speak today. Okay. Okay, Isabelle, yes. Guillaume le Conquérant, Duc de Normandie. Wow. Okay, it sounds better. It sounds better in French, I think. Okay, so that's William. Now, because of William's order, that the language of the court was French or Norman French, the impact was in a very particular area. So the impact of this ruling was mostly among the elites, among the prestigious people. You can see two words here we have today, prestige, elite. They have French roots. In French, you said exactly the same thing. So you can see this impact of the ruling of William the Conqueror, particularly in some specific areas. In my opinion, most interesting, so of course, we can see this when we talk about royal language. So in French, you use words just like this: heir, duke, court, royal, monarchy. Some of them are pronounced the same in French and English. Heir, heir. Who is the heir to the crown of England? William is the heir to the crown of England. Okay. Duke, you can see the spelling is a little different, but the pronunciation is quite similar. Court, royal, monarchy. So here the pronunciation is quite different. We say monarchy in English, monarchy. Okay. So all of these words, this vocabulary of the royals and the monarchy, it's very associated with French. I think a very interesting example of this is how in English we often have two words. One word when we talk about the animal, and another completely different word when we talk about the meat. And sometimes the word for the meat comes from French. Okay, so this I think is interesting because the farmers and the butchers were not in the elites, they were lower class. They did not know how to speak French. So they used language or words like cow, calf, sheep, pig, deer. Most of these words are Germanic in origin or Dutch in origin. Cow, calf, sheep, pig, deer. On the other hand, the servers who gave the food to the royals, gave the food to the elites, they had to speak French. And so when the food was served, it was not called cow or calf or sheep. It was called beef, like the French word. Veal, similar to the French word. Mutton, like the French word. Pork, venison. So when we eat the food, it's called beef, veal, mutton, pork, or venison. But when you see the animals outside, we don't use this language. So that's how these two sets of words developed. The Germanic origin words from the farmers and the butchers, and the French origin words from the chefs and the servers serving to the elites and the rich people in the castles. Good. Now, as we started our webinar with a question about what food is the best, we saw that French food is better than English. So you can see a lot of words that we use in English that come from French. Cuisine. Now be careful. The room where you cook in English is not called a cuisine, it's called a kitchen. But we use the word cuisine to talk about a type of food. So for example, you might say, I love Italian cuisine. Or Japanese cuisine is very sophisticated. Cuisine. Next, we have sauce, just like in French. Mayonnaise. Be careful with the pronunciation. Mayonnaise. Mayonnaise. So the may is the strong part. Mayonnaise. Do not stress the O. Now, sometimes in English, especially in North America, they shorten this word and they say mayo. Mayo. So mayonnaise, the full word, and mayo for short. Cream, it's quite like the French word, cream, little different pronunciation. Mustard, of course, the best mustard comes from France, from Dijon, mustard. Next, we have to be careful. We have the word raisin, raisin. So when you go to different parts of France, for example, the Loire Valley, you will see a lot of vineyards and you will see a lot of vines, the trees where you can pick the fruit. Delicious. It's a grape. It's a grape. So the fresh fruit that we use to make wine or to eat with cheese, we call a grape in English, grape. But the dry fruit, what in French you call raisin sec, I think, in English we just call raisin, raisin. Okay, so the fresh fruit is called grape, and the dry fruit is called raisin. It's a little bit similar with prune. The fresh fruit that you grow on the tree, we call plum, plums, okay? So the fresh fruit is called a plum. When you dry this fruit, it's called a prune. So grapes and plums are fresh fruit from the tree. And raisins and prunes are dried fruit. Okay. Next, we have the word menu, menu. So when you go to a restaurant, they will give you the menu. Be careful in French, menu, it's often called menu du jour. So it's a combination or a fixed meal. In English, the menu, it's just a list of things available. So it's maybe a little bit like la carte in French, okay? When you go to a restaurant, sometimes you can, they will have a fixed meal, which they will say, today's special. And, or you can say, can I order à la carte? Can I order just from the menu? So we call the paper or the book that they give you the menu. Casserole, of course, is a French word. I'm not sure about in English, but I'm not sure about in French, but in English, casserole can refer to a dish, okay, that you make and that you can eat. This is a delicious casserole. Last week, I made a nice bean casserole. Or it can refer to the pan or the pot in which you make it. So I went to the shop and I bought a casserole, or sometimes you say a casserole pan. Okay. And the last word here that of course comes from French is restaurant. Restaurant. Be careful with the pronunciation. Restaurant. Okay. Okay, in French, it's just the saucepan. It's not. It doesn't refer to the dish. Okay, it's just the saucepan. Thank you, Ellen. And restaurant. Be careful. In French, you like to shorten words. So you often say resto, and you think maybe we say the same in English, but we don't. We always say restaurant. If you ask about a resto, people will not understand. They won't know what you're talking about. So be careful with that. Okay. So there's food. There's also words related to law, politics, and society. Okay. Crown, money. Be careful with the pronunciation. Money, marriage, justice, and court. All come from French, of course. Be careful with the pronunciation. Crown, money, marriage, justice, and court. Also vocabulary from architecture and art, castle, arch, theater, portrait, gallery. Castle, arch, theater, portrait, and gallery all come from French. So we had food, we had law and society, politics, we had art and architecture, and of course the elites were also interested in the military. So that's why we have from French, as we saw before, soldier, but also army, pistol, espionage, surveillance. Soldier, army, pistol, espionage, surveillance. Great. So there are so many words. Those were very old words that have been in English for a long time, but there are more recent words. So as we said at the start, the French are known for great food, great fashion, and great art. So you can see the language of food, fashion, and art is French. So we have words like in English, croissant, in French, croissant. I hope my pronunciation is okay. Sophie told me, do not pronounce the T at the end. Croissant. In English, croissant. Champagne. Chic. Boutique. Perfume. Cinema. And genre. So you can see sometimes we keep a kind of French pronunciation, chic, and sometimes not as much. Okay, so it's interesting. Oh, thank you very much, Isabel and Ellen. You are kind. Sonia helped me with my French pronunciation. Okay, so that's vocabulary. Now, let's look at some similarities in relation to French. Both English and French are sometimes called SVO syntax languages. That means the structure of the sentence is subject, verb, object. So, I like chocolate. I, subject, like, verb, chocolate, object. That's the standard structure for a sentence in French and in English. So that's nice. Now, it does get a little bit more complicated if we put an adjective in. I like dark chocolate. Subject I, verb like. Now, for the object noun chocolate, we're going to qualify it with an adjective, and we say I like dark chocolate. Okay, so the adjective goes before the noun. So our object here, you could say our object is dark chocolate, but the important thing is the adjective goes before the noun. It's quite different to French. Another thing when we talk about adjectives, and I see this mistake a lot, is that French people, Spanish people, sometimes too, Italians too, sometimes want to pluralize the adjective. So the teams wore different colors. Our subject, the teams, our verb wore. Now we have our adjective different, not difference. There's no S at the end. So our noun is pluralized, colors with an S, but our adjective never changes. It's always the same. So two things to remember. Adjectives go before the noun, and the adjectives never change, never make them plural. Adverbs are a little bit more difficult. Adverbs are quite unpredictable, and we don't have time to look at all of the differences for adverbs today. But one thing I wanted to show you that's important is that when we talk about an adverb of manner, so when we talk about how you do something, it will often go to the end of the sentence. So he, our subject, speaks, our verb. Now our object is next. So we want the verb and the object together. He speaks English well. He speaks English very well. He speaks English fluently. So we want our verb and our object together. We do not want to say, he speaks well English. It's a common mistake I see with students writing. They say things like, he speaks very well English. So try always to keep the verb and the object together as close as possible in the sentence if you are using an adverb. Okay. Now, on the topic of grammar, I'm going to tell you about how I had a nightmare when I was studying French in school. The nightmares were about la conjugation. Conjugation. Wow. It was very scary. We had 3 groups of verbs, EOR verbs, IOR verbs, and the other verbs, OR-E verbs. Oh, it was stressful. We had a lot of endings to learn. La conjugaison. Okay, yeah, it's difficult. So we had a lot of verb endings to learn, and it was very stressful. And some French people tell me the same thing. They say, I am afraid about the conjugation, or I need to improve my conjugation. But look at this French conjugation. It's very complex. There's a lot to learn. Now, let me show you some English conjugation. Work, worked, worked. Play, played, played. That's all you need to know to conjugate a verb in English. You need to know the infinitive, the past simple, and the past participle. Often they are the same. Just add ed for a regular verb. For an irregular verb, it can be different. See, saw, seen. So you can see that English conjugation is not very complicated. You just need to learn some irregular verbs. So if we look at the conjugation of a verb, the verb to eat, we can see the different forms. The full infinitive, to eat. So I want to eat my dinner. The bare infinitive, or the infinitive without to, eat. I can eat a lot of chocolate. So we use it with modals, for example. I can eat a lot of chocolate. The ing, eating. I am eating my dinner. Or you can use it with another verb. I like eating chocolate. Or you can use it as a noun. Eating chocolate is great. The past simple, ate. I ate my dinner yesterday. And the past participle used with other verbs. I have eaten a lot of chocolate this week. So that's it. You have to eat, eating, ate, and eaten. Those are all the manipulations, all of the changes of the verb eat. One other thing to be careful of is, for some reason, in the present simple, third person singular, we have an S. So don't forget about he eats, she eats, it eats. So don't forget to include that S. So in total, you have 6 changes of the verb. If you compare to the French verb manger, there are a lot of different endings, a lot of different manipulations for different situations. So it's quite a big difference between French and English. By the way, maybe in the future, I will do a webinar all about the English verb. I think it could be interesting because I have a lot of students who know the past participle, but they don't understand how or when to use it, or the ing. So if anybody wants, please let me know if that could be something interesting to you, a webinar about the English verb. Okay, let's talk about pronunciation. Okay, so some vocabulary. Oh, thank you, Ellen, Isabel. Nice idea. Good. Some vocabulary, it's pronounced in basically the same way in English and French. Some, it's different. So here we have some vocabulary: prince, conversation, exchange, table, and violence. So all of these words come from French, but the pronunciation is different. So be careful when you are reading or when you are speaking. Let's go through them once more. Prince, conversation, exchange, table, violence. All are French words, but with a different pronunciation in English. And then some words are pronounced basically the same in English and French. There might be some very minor changes. So we have ballet, bouquet, cliché, débris, champagne, faux pas. So these words are French words that we use in English and where the pronunciation has stayed basically the same. You don't need to change a lot, okay? Ballet, bouquet, cliché, débris, champagne, faux pas. Yes, Ellen, a bouquet of flowers. That's how we use it in English. A bouquet will always refer to flowers. So, for example, last weekend it was Mother's Day in Ireland. So a lot of people bought a bouquet of flowers for their mother. A bouquet of flowers. So in English, a bouquet of flowers, it's an arrangement. If you pick flowers from your garden, we don't usually say a bunch of flowers or some flowers. But if they are arranged in a particular way, we will say a bouquet. So you can pronounce it basically the same as in French. The reason I use these words is because I have met, welcome Sylvain, better late than never. Okay, so thank you for joining us. But the reason I use these words is because I have met students before who say things like ballet or bouquet. They're trying to make them sound English, but in fact, it's the same. Just last week, I had a student who said debris, talking about debris. Okay, so sometimes you make the mistake of changing the word to try to sound more English, but it's confusing because the pronunciation is actually very similar in French and English. So that brings us to an important area, false friends. Okay, so false friends are something that some people are really nervous about, really afraid about. But don't worry, there are not too many false friends. But of course, because there's a lot of language in English from French, there will be some false friends. So let's just look at a few examples. First, we have actual or actually. So in French, when you use the word actuellement, there is an element of time. Okay, there's an element of time. Oh yes, Ellen, just before we start on, yes, all of those words, Ellen, they are the same, the same or similar pronunciation and the same meaning in French and English. So that's a good sentence. There is debris on the road. Without the a, it's uncountable, Ellen. So there is debris, or there is some debris on the road after the accident. So yes, all of those words, the pronunciation is the same and the meaning is basically. Now, talking about false friends. In French, when you talk about actuellement, there is an element of time. In English, that's not the case. There is no connection to time. So actual is like when you might say in reality, like in French when you might say en fait. So if you say to me, hello, James, and I say, actually, my name is Patrick. So I might use it to politely correct you or to show that something is a little bit different. So I say, actually, okay, or the actual situation, okay? So yes. Can anybody tell me what word can you use in English if you want to talk about this particular time? So if I say that Emmanuel Macron is the president of France, what adjective could I use? Yes, exactly, Miriam, Ellen. So we can use currently for the adverb. So currently, Emmanuel Macron is the president of France, or Emmanuel Macron is the current president of France. So we can use current for the adjective, currently for the adverb. Presently, yes, Ellen, it's true. It exists. It's an option, but we don't use it very much. It's a little bit old-fashioned and it has a different feel. So we could use current or currently, or we could say at the moment. Okay. So for example, I usually live in Ireland, but currently I am in Austria. So I usually live in Ireland, but at the moment I am in Austria. Great. Now, next we have the verb to resume. To resume. Some people in French confuse this with the English verb to summarize. So if you want a short version of something, we will summarize. Okay? So summarize or sum up. Okay, so to resume in English, what does it mean to resume? What does it mean if we say to resume? Let me help you. I was playing a game of tennis and I decided to take a break. And after 20 minutes, we resumed our game of tennis. So to resume means to start again, to start again. Exactly, restart, to circle back. Okay, good, yeah. Little different feel, okay, but exactly to restart, to start again, to start after a break. Okay, great, great. So it's a little bit like continue something, you resume. So you take a break and then you resume. Sometimes when you go to an event like a presentation or a seminar, the speaker might say, we will take a 20-minute break for some coffee and we will resume at 11 o'clock. Okay, we will resume at 11 o'clock. Isabel asked a question, can you say right now? Yeah, that's a good expression, but right now means exactly this moment, okay? It's a little bit strong. So we wouldn't say right now, Emmanuel Macron is the president of France. it would sound strange. But we might say, if you ask me to come outside for a drink, I might say, sorry, I'm busy right now, but I will be finished in 5 minutes. Okay, I hope that helps, Isabel. So you are right, it's good. You could say right now, but it's a bit strong and it's really focused on this particular time, maybe a shorter period of time. Great. So to resume, does not mean to summarize or to sum up. It means to start again. To rest, another verb. Thanks, Isabel. To rest means to relax, okay? So maybe, I think in French you might say se reposer, okay? To rest. So, oh, I'm tired. I need to rest. Okay, we can also use it as a verb, as a noun. I took a rest, okay? To take a rest. It's like to take a break. So I was hiking and I started feeling tired, so I took a rest. Okay. To rest, rester, French, it means to, when you want to stay somewhere. Okay. So for example, you cannot say in English, we rested at a hotel for 3 days. No, we stayed at a hotel. Okay. We stayed at a hotel. Okay. Or if you visit your friend and you drink a little bit too much and you cannot drive home, you might say, can I stay here tonight? You won't say, can I rest here tonight? Okay. L'Atelier says it means to be dead too. We have the expression rest in peace, okay, when someone dies. But we wouldn't usually say, if we say, my grandmother is resting, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. Okay. So it's true we have the expression rest in peace. And I know, yes, in French, maybe you say repose when someone dies. But in English, no, to rest means to take a break when you're tired. Okay. To pass an exam. Sometimes my students say to me, oh, next year I will do the Cambridge exam or the TOEIC exam. They tell me, I will pass the Cambridge exam. I will pass the TOEIC exam. And I say, you are very confident, because in English, to pass an exam means you succeed, you get the required level that you need. Okay, so to pass the Cambridge exams, you need approximately 60%. If you do not get 60%, you do not pass the exam. So next week, I am going to do an exam. Or sometimes we say to sit an exam. It's a little bit more formal. Okay, so to do an exam or to sit an exam. Ellen asks, can we say to nail an exam? Yes, you can. It's an expression. It's very informal. And we use that when you really succeed. So I nailed it. We can also use this with a job interview. How was your job interview? I nailed it. Means I did a great job. Okay. But if we want to be a little bit more neutral, I passed my exam. I passed the exam. Okay. Next word we have in our false friends is location. Okay. Location means a place. So for example, we can say, this is a beautiful location. Means this is a beautiful place. It has no connection to when you pay to live, for example, in an Airbnb or in a room for a week or 2 weeks. So we have the verb to rent. So when you pay to live in someone else's house, someone else's apartment, we say you rent the house. How much is your rent? Okay, the location just means the seat, the place. Okay, so wow, this is a beautiful location. If you want to stay in a hotel or a B&B, you might say, yeah, it's a good location. It's near the beach. it's near the train station, but it has nothing to do with paying the money to stay somewhere. Okay, like louer, to rent. Okay, so be careful with that confusion. Next, we have the word journey. So journey in English is not about the day. Okay, so the journey, it means traveling from one place to another. So for example, if I say, I want to go from Paris to Lyon, and my friend Sylvain might say, oh, that's a long journey. That's a long journey. Okay, it will take 5 or 6 hours. Okay, so the journey, it's about moving from one place to another. It has nothing to do with the day. Magazine sounds a little bit like the French word magasin. So a magazine in English is a journal, okay? Something to read, like little bit like a newspaper, but it will be usually every week or every month. So famous magazines are Vogue for fashion, or National Geographic with beautiful photographs. So these are famous magazines. And our last false friend is chance. Okay, so when in French you say bonne chance, in English we say, anybody? Good luck. Okay, so chance in English talks about an opportunity or the probability. Okay, good, exactly, Alain. Okay, so maybe I was wrong. You can also say magazine in French. Okay, good to know. Thanks, Alain. So chance, it talks about probability or opportunity. So for example, we might say, what are the chances of, let me see, Alan, what are the chances of Ireland winning the next Rugby World Cup? You might say, the chances are not good because France are better, South Africa are better. The chances are not good. Okay, but you can say good luck in the World Cup. Okay, so chance in English, it's about probability or it's about opportunity. Okay, so you can say, I didn't get the chance to do that. So when your teacher asks you, did you do your homework? You say, no, I didn't get the chance. I didn't get the chance. Good. Okay. There are also what I might sometimes call semi-false friends, okay? False friends in just some situations. These are a little bit more difficult. So arrive, you can say, my train arrives at 10 o'clock, just like in French. But when you do something well, you cannot say, I arrived to fix my car. No, you could say, I succeeded in fixing my car, or I managed to fix my car. Okay, I managed to fix my car. So you cannot say, I arrived to fix my car. It doesn't make sense. So when something is difficult, we often say, I managed or I succeeded in. For example, learning English. Sometimes you are sad, you feel like, I will never learn English. But don't worry, you will manage. You will manage to learn English. You will succeed, but you will not arrive. The train arrives, the plane arrives. Okay. Next one, it's quite confusing. Important. Important, we talk about a very important person, someone that's significant. For example, if you say, do you like your job? And a person says, well, the pay is not very good. I don't have a big salary, but I like my job. I like my colleagues, and that's more important. Okay. But when we talk about something being serious or big, so you cannot say, I saw an important car accident last week. You say, I saw a big car accident. I saw a serious car accident. Okay, so be a little bit careful with important. The next one is very common. Normally, in English, is a little bit like usually, and means this is the normal situation, just like you can use it in French. So, for example, normally I drink coffee in the mornings. But when we talk about something in the future, we say it is supposed to, or you are supposed to. You could also sometimes use should. So, for example, if you say, I looked at the weather forecast and it is supposed to be sunny at the weekend. You cannot say, it is normally sunny this weekend. But I can say, it's supposed to be sunny this weekend when we talk about our expectation in the future. Okay, so be very careful with normally. And the last one of these is report. So just like in French, you can say, I wrote a report, but you can report someone, okay, to report a criminal to the police. But sometimes I get emails from students saying, can we report our next meeting? It doesn't make sense. Don't send an email to your teacher saying, can we report our meeting? You want to say, can we postpone? Can we postpone? Or use the phrasal verb. Does anybody know the phrasal verb for postpone? It's put off. Can we put off our next meeting until Wednesday? Can we postpone our meeting until Wednesday? You cannot say, can we report our meeting? Okay, so be careful with those. There are a lot of false friends. So we had the pure false friends. And then we have the semi-false friends. So there are a lot of false friends between French and English. And this could be another topic for a webinar, but at the moment, that's enough friends for now. Also be careful with some words that we have borrowed into English from French that have a slightly different meaning. So for example, a lot of French people say, oh, in English, people say rendezvous. But you cannot say, I have a rendezvous with my dentist next week, because rendezvous in English means a specific meeting at a specific time and a specific place. And it's usually used by the military. So the military will have a rendezvous point. Or if you go to a music festival with thousands of people and you say, if we get lost, this is our rendezvous point. This is where we will meet. Okay, we will rendezvous here. But we don't use it very much. We will never say, I have a rendezvous with my teacher next week, or I have a rendezvous with the dentist or the doctor. We'll say, I have an appointment or I have a meeting. Okay. Another word that can cause confusion is encore. In English, a rendezvous for a date, yeah, you could. But a rendezvous, it's very specific, usually when you don't want anybody to get lost. So that's why the military use it. If you meet someone and you say, let's rendezvous at this place, you can, but it will sound strange. And we don't use it much like that. Okay, people will know what you mean, but it's not used much like that. So usually I say, be careful. Yes, people know the word rendezvous, but we don't really use it. So an encore, in English, you might laugh, but if you go to a concert, at the end of the concert, the people might shout, encore, encore. And we think in French, that's what you shout at a concert when you want more. But I think it's not true. So what do you shout in France when you want the band to play another song? So in English, we say, oh, that was great. The encore was fantastic. They played my favorite song. What do you shout in French when you want the band to play another song? Does anybody know? Une autre. Okay, yes. Thank you, Nicole. Une autre. Yeah, I thought it might have been that. So in English, we shout encore, but it just means une autre, but it's very specific. So you can see rendezvous, encore, they are words we use in English, but they have very particular, very narrow meanings. They're not used in general. Okay. Bis bis. Okay, Isabel. Bis bis. Okay, that's Really? Is that an April Fool's? Come on, it's the 3rd of April. I don't know. It's a trick. Okay. Now, in a similar way, be careful not to look at modern words that are used. So be careful with the pronunciation. If you go to Ireland, England, USA, Australia, and you ask for the Wi-Fi code, nobody will understand you. Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi. What is the Wi-Fi code? Can I use the Wi-Fi? Also, if you have for your breakfast a smoothie, people will not understand you. You maybe have a smoothie. So I had a banana and strawberry smoothie. Another difficulty is if you say you want to eat at McDo. We never say this. We don't know what you're talking about. McDonald's. Just say the full word, McDonald's. So to put it in a sentence, you might say, why would anybody eat at McDonald's? The food is terrible. That's what I think. Okay. Why do you want to eat at McDonald's? The food is terrible. So smoothie, Ellen, it's that famous smoothie, not z, but smoothie. Okay. So don't say smoothie, there will be a problem. So you need to say smoothie. Bring your tongue to your lips. Good. So you can get a smoothie at McDonald's. And then you might go to the cinema to watch Spider-Man. We don't know what this is. Spider-Man. Okay? So Wi-Fi, smoothie, McDonald's, Spider-Man. Great. Okay. We have some confusing verbs. Yes, that is difficult. So sometimes in French you have one verb and in English you have two. For example, faire can mean make, can mean do. Remember, make, it's produce or create. Do, it's for an activity, an exercise, or a task. So, I made a cake. I made coffee. A lot of cars are made in France. My computer was made in China. Do, it's for an activity. I do yoga. I do karate. Okay. I did my homework yesterday. I did the shopping. I did an exam. Remember, so I passed an exam means I got the correct result, but I did an exam. Maybe I passed, maybe I didn't. We have the verb dire, which can be translated sometimes as say, sometimes as tell. It's a little bit confusing. So here, the easiest distinction is to say there's a grammatical difference. To say does not take a direct personal object. To tell, it needs a direct personal object. I told him about the party. He told me about the dinner. I told her to come to the party. So you have tell him, tell her, tell me, tell them. You will generally have a direct personal object. You also have tell a joke, tell a story. Okay. Sensible. In English, we have sensible and sensitive. Sensible means use your brain, use your head. So if you have an important job interview in the morning and you go out drinking and partying with your friends, that's not sensible. Sensitive, it's about your reactions. It's about your feelings or emotions. So you can say, I told him a joke and he got very upset. He is very sensitive. he is very sensitive. Or if you put some cream on your skin and then, it burns. My skin is sensitive. My skin is sensitive. So be careful with some of those. And that brings us basically to the end of the webinar. But just to finish, I have a little story that I think is quite interesting. We saw that a lot of food vocabulary moved from French to English. A lot of royal vocabulary moved from French to English. And of course, tennis is a French game. It started and grew in popularity in France. So tennis, a lot of the vocabulary comes from French to English. So maybe you didn't know, but tennis comes from tenez. So hundreds of years ago, when French people played this game, they served. And when they served, they shouted, tenez. It was polite to hit the ball and shout, tenez. So that's where we got the name for this game, tennis. So you can see tennis, serve, court, racket. All of these words came from French into English. Now, the last word is love. Now, I'm not talking about love like this, but in tennis, love. What does love mean? What score do you have if you are love? Zero, okay? So in English, we talk about the score in tennis. 15 love, 30 love, 40 love. Love is tennis speak for zero in English. Why? Because l'œuf, the egg. So when someone scores zero in a tennis match, we say love because of the French l'œuf, from the egg. Okay, so that's the end of our seminar about these connections between French and English. If you have any questions, please ask now. I will stay here for a few minutes, or send me an email, patrick@anglify.com, if you have any questions or comments, or if you have any requests about our future webinars. I mentioned false friends, the English verb, different things like that. So if you have any requests, just send me an email and we'll see what we can do. Also, thank you very much for your attention and also for all of your comments and questions. It was great. If you have any more questions, just ask now. And thank you also for leaving some comments under the video. Sylvain, Hélène, a few other people left some nice comments there. So thank you for that. Thank you, Miriam and Hélène. Nathalie, thank you. And don't forget that I will be here next week at the same time at 8 o'clock on Thursday on the topic of the English language and the English language speaking world. So it might be interesting to come to that. It's a little bit connected to our seminar this evening. Okay, good, good. I would be so happy to see you there. So great. Thanks a lot, everybody. Isabelle, merci beaucoup pour cette vidéo. Très intéressante. Okay, yes, thank you. Oh, thank you, Ellen. Kathleen, thank you very much. Enjoy your day in Australia. Thank you, Sylvie and Angelique, everybody. It's so great that you came. Beatrice, great to see you again. Okay, so thank you, Isabel. Just like you, I'm trying my best. I'm trying to learn a little bit. Good, yes, yes, thank you.